My name is Thomas, and I'm the founder and CEO of Deep Ecosystems. Together with Swisscontact, we have developed something that helps you to position your startup ecosystem and find its strengths and weaknesses and develop strategies to improve the situation of founders in your region. It is called the Ecosystem Health Check. Now, how do you measure the health of an ecosystem? Actually, an ecosystem is not only about investments and exits, and measuring the amount of funding that startups raise in your region will not lead to a good understanding of how good your ecosystem is really functioning. It is more important to look at all of the different aspects, the soft factors that make an ecosystem function. The Ecosystem Health Check does exactly that. We have 8 metrics that analyze all of the different sides of the ecosystem, helping you to understand diversity and inclusivity, knowledge and talent, startup support, the specialization you have in your ecosystem, the network density, innovation culture, the policies in place, as well as the international connectivity of your ecosystem. To show you how to measure your ecosystem's health, we show you one example here on the board, coming from the results side. If you want to do this yourself, I recommend you to go into the guide that we provide in the download section, and there you can read up 2 examples that are described, where we take you step by step through how to create an ecosystem health check. The 2 examples are Cologne in Germany, in Europe, and there's Guatemala from Central America that you can also analyze how we did it there. Now, to do this from the results side, we're using this canvas, which basically shows the outcome of the health check. So many things here are like showing only the end result, but following the health check guide, you will be able to replicate it. So how does it work? Let's start with the first metric, diversity and inclusivity. The first thing that we need to identify is the proxy, the number that we're actually measuring to understand how diverse and inclusive our ecosystem is. And such a proxy is never 100% complete or accurate picture of the situation. So choosing the number that you will use to measure such an abstract concept like diversity is quite important. So normally we take a lot of time to discuss this with you and other ecosystem stakeholders to understand what really is the number that matters most for you. Some examples, for example, is the share of foreign-born founders. So migrants, how accepted are they in the startup scene? Do you have like a diverse set of backgrounds in terms of geography, history, traditions, culture, etc., or do you only have founders from one group of people? The other example that often is used is the share of female founders. That is, for example, what in our example of Cologne has been used, and I will show you in a bit what came out of that. So the first thing that we need to define is the proxy. The second thing that needs to be defined is the benchmark, the so-called target. What would be a good number to look at? What would be a number that we want to reach? So let's say we take the share of female founders. What is this percentage that we want to have? So let's say we put that number in here, and then we have something to compare against. The initial number here, the current, is what we have at the moment in our ecosystem. So we need to measure this then very accurately in our own ecosystem to say, okay, are we better or are we worse than the benchmark? If we are worse, then of course we will have a red color here. So if we are not performing as the benchmark, then this section will become red, and we will see, okay, the health in our ecosystem in this part is not as good as maybe in other parts. If we, however, meet the benchmark or we have a larger number, then it will become green. And so we will see in this section, we won't have such a weakness, but maybe we even have a strength. Now, in Cologne, sorry, to show you what came out in Cologne, we were looking for a benchmark number for female founders, so the percentage of female founders. And to find a benchmark, we were looking at the European average. Now, the European average already is a bit sad because it's only 15.5% female founders in Europe. So on average, 15.5% have are female founders. So this is based on all founders in Europe. So it's not about how many startups have a female founder, but really the percentage of women among the whole group of founders. Now, this number varies, of course, from city to city. And we could have chosen also a benchmark that is, for example, the top contender among all cities, but we've chosen here the average. And I will show you why that also makes sense, because Cologne, unfortunately, has a weakness in this side. It is one of the many places where female founders are super underrepresented. Here we see 6.5 of the founders in Cologne are female. And so this result shows us that we have a problem with diversity and inclusiveness in Cologne. Even though the city is very open and it's very known for its open culture, among the founders, we don't see that reflected. So this part would be red, and that's why I picked a red post-it here, so we see and remember that we underperform in this section. Now we go further and we do the same in all of the 8 metrics, and I will take you through quickly because I want to show you the final result. But of course, when you do that yourself in this tool, you will have more time to spend on each of these different metrics. The second metric we looked at was knowledge and talent. And knowledge and talent, we said, is the defining proxy that we want to use is the number of developers we have in our city, because IT talent is a good indicator for how affine we are towards technology, to digital technology, how many people know how to code and could start a tech startup potentially in the region. So looking at that, we found out that actually there's a very high number of around 150,000 developers in Cologne, which is one of the largest numbers in Europe. So this is really a strength of Cologne. And if you put that in percentage of the population of Cologne, which is around 1 million, you reach 50% of the population in Cologne is actually developers. Of course, not everyone there lives also in Cologne, but they work in Cologne and are connected in Cologne. So 15% of the population, that's the rate of developers per capita. As a benchmark, what we picked was the city of Frankfurt. The city of Frankfurt actually has the highest share in Germany for developers versus population. So that is 16%. And you see Cologne is probably the second largest per capita in Germany, and that's why it's green. So we have a good performance on knowledge and talent. We have tech skills here. Of course, you could also discuss about what is important for you to measure here. Maybe it's in your case, it's not so much the IT talent, but it's a different kind of talent you want to look at. The next metric we looked at was startup support. So how can we measure the level and the quality of startup support in a city? One example and one suggestion that we put forward, and Cologne followed this, was to look at the amount or the percentage of mentors in the startup programs that have own startup experience. Because someone who has startup experience can, of course, share better with upcoming new founders what it means to start a company and what they really need to take care of. So the amount and the percentage of mentors with own startup experience in Cologne, based on one large accelerator there, which is called Startplatz, was 53%. So 53% of the mentors there had their own startup before and could share these experiences. Now, of course, the question being like, what is a good benchmark? And there's a couple of studies and a couple of observations from different big accelerators in the world. And actually, we came to the conclusion that around 50% is definitely a good number. If you're above 50%, that's pretty good. Because, of course, there's also some mentoring skills that that can be given or some skills that can be mentored by non-previous founders. So not everyone has to be a serial entrepreneur, but 53% is really good. So we are extremely happy to see that Cologne is doing well on 2 metrics already. And then we have the next one, which is specialization. And specialization is very difficult to measure. The question being like, what could you look at in terms of specialization? What we suggest is to use an index that measures the investments in diverse sectors. So are all investments going into one sector, or are they going to a diverse set of sectors? And you can measure this with an index that is going from 0 to 1, 0 being like super spread out, and 1 being super concentrated into one sector. So let's say if it only was going to fintech, then it would have been 1. In Cologne, we do have a quite good diversification. We ended up with 0.23, and that is a good result. So 0.23 is a very diverse, but still a bit specialized result. So in the end, it is really a discussion what you want to have. You want to have something that is super specialized or more specialized because you say the vertical depth of your startups is actually helping other startups to learn from them, and more is developing in one sector. Or you're saying, no, the diversity is actually good for recombining knowledge and recombining skills, and founders can learn and combine products with others. So depending on that, you can say, okay, what is a good number? If you want something super specialized or more in the specialized area, I would suggest to put a benchmark at 0.7, something like this. If you say we want something that is quite diverse, I would say you should go for 0.3, maybe 0.2 can be still good. Okay. The next point was about the network density. Network density meaning like how close are people to each other? Is communication fast? Are people getting together quickly? Do they have a lot of opportunities? So the number that we wanted to look at was the number of tech meetups. And the tech meetups in Cologne, we calculated them by participants, and we said how many participants do you have based based on your population per capita. And then we said, we came up with a number calculating all the meetup participation, and we found out that it was 20 meetup participants per capita. So that is the network density here, but that doesn't tell us much yet if we don't have a good benchmark. So what we said is we need to look at the best performer in Germany, so have like a city that is also in the same geography, same kind of culture in terms of meetup and being social with each other. So we looked at the best contender, and that is Munich in that case. And actually Munich has a per capita meetup participation of around 60. So that is much larger than what we see in Cologne. So the startup scene in Munich is much more networked and much more dense than we see in as we see it in Cologne. So definitely here we have a red result, a red status. Cologne has a problem in terms of network density. Then let's look at the next metric, innovation culture. So innovation culture is a very hard to measure concept, but basically what it boils down to is trust. So we want to understand if investors, corporates, business owners, politicians trust in the startup scene to innovate and produce positive results for them. If there is no trust in the innovation capabilities of the innovation system of the startups, then people will not invest in it. They will not give their resources, will not invest their time, etc. So for innovation culture, one way to measure it, and that's really a suggestion for Cologne, it made a lot of sense to use that, was do international investors trust to give money to startups in Cologne. So we were looking at the euros that came into Cologne from international investors. And yeah, we basically reached the result of investments per capita, and that was 17 million, so 17 million euros of foreign investment, and that is unfortunately also not a very good number because again, let's compare. We needed to compare this to something else, and the benchmark here was Cologne itself, saying like, okay, this is the year 2019. What was actually the all-time high in Cologne, and they themselves had 36 million in the past. So they are underperforming based against their own all-time high and are not increasing these foreign investments, but are actually decreasing. So that's another red bubble showing that we have a problem here in the innovation culture. Now, the next topic that we wanted to measure was the quality of policies. We wanted to understand how easy is it to do business in Cologne? What do founders think? And actually, there was a survey among founders in Cologne that asked them, how do you rate the business regulation, the business framework in Cologne for your ecosystem? And that resulted in 70% of the founders in Cologne saying that they rate the ease of doing business good or very good. So 70% said, yes, we have a good framework for running our business in Cologne. The policies are good. So we wanted to compare that to the European average, and we actually took the average of the top 20 hubs. So not only the whole average of whole Europe, but basically the 20 best hubs in Europe. And there the result was 68%. So Cologne is a bit better than the average. So Cologne is better than the top 20 on average on policies. Now so it's a green bubble again, and we have a good result here. The last element is the international connectivity that we wanted to measure, and there we were looking at the perception of Cologne by international founders. And on the startup heat map, there's a survey on which are the best hubs in the world or in Europe to start up, and there's a score from 0 to 100, and actually Cologne reached 82%. So we had in 2020, I think it was 82% score for Cologne, and that again we wanted to compare to the all-time high Cologne ever had, and that was 88%. So Cologne was declining a bit in popularity, and basically international founders didn't look as much to Cologne anymore as they did before. So we had a decline in international popularity, going down from 88 to 82. Since the decline is not so big, still in the 80s, we would put here the yellow color and say it's a mixed result. It is not necessarily bad, it's not necessarily red nor green, so we stay with yellow. So now that we did all of this, we actually have a beautiful visualization of the current state of the Cologne ecosystem. We see here the health of the Cologne ecosystem as the stakeholders in Cologne have defined their benchmarks. Now, we understand that there is 3 red bubbles where we see definitely we have problems. And for sure, or we have here the yellow one on international connectivity. So for strategy building, we definitely should look at both strengths and weaknesses. So we should look at, okay, what are the things that we definitely need to solve? And I would say the red ones are the ones that need to be top on the agenda. So we should think about diversity. How can we have more diversity? Now, not only thinking about the proxy, that would be the wrong approach. The proxy is measuring a bigger phenomenon. So, but how can we make the ecosystem more diverse? And this number would consequently go up. How can we have more network density, more exchange between founders, more denser startup scene? So 20, that's again the proxy. It's not about now just organizing meetups to get this number up. It is about how can we change the bigger concept of density of the startup scene. So strategies should focus on this. And also innovation culture. People are not trusting that startups in Cologne are producing cutting edge technology, cutting edge innovation yet. So this innovation culture is another big problem that needs addressing. So with these three big priorities, I think we already have a good basis for an action plan. On the strengths, of course, we should look as well because we have like outstanding results, and I think there we can build on. So looking, for example, at the level of developers, which is exceptional in Europe, you can build on this. You can actually create strategies based on that. Also, policies are perceived to be strong. Maybe that helps to convince more people to trust in the innovation culture and the innovation startup scene. Also, the mentors. There is a basis. There is a bottom-up kind of community where you have mentors that give back what they've learned with their startups. So building on those strengths is also important for the strategy. In the end, you get a good idea with this health check of your ecosystem. It's really worthwhile to do this, and it's something that you can do continuously. So now you can set up a dashboard where you put these numbers and you track them over time. And while you improve your strategy on the execution of your strategy, and you improve your ecosystem, you will also see the numbers change, and you actually will see it in a much more detailed fashion than if you would only look at the number of investments. So if you're interested, talk to us, speak to us about how you can run your own ecosystem health check and how all of the details work behind these numbers. So thank you and happy to talk to you.